again, everyone. It's good to have you with us for this event. It figures to be an exceptional one that doesn't need any build-up.
Are you ready?
Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop fighting.
This is the main event of the evening.
Athletes, huddle up. It's time to begin. Get focused. Let's go. Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blu Robinson here. Thank you so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. We greatly appreciate you doing so. Athletes, as always, please continue to watch that website, addicttoathlete.org. You'll find all of our content, a lot of our interesting tips and strategies to help you overcome addiction and mental health issues simply by jumping on there and taking a look at all the free content we have for you. Specifically, take a look at our upcoming events. We have two amazing events coming up in the next several months. The first is our No One Left Behind Team Half Marathon. This is where you're only as fast as your slowest runner. You guys get to cross that line together, and you must be at least 15 feet in proximity the whole time you're running. So this is a great half marathon for someone who may have a little bit of apprehension, maybe have some nerves. You guys get to finish this half marathon together, and that's coming up in June. And of course, our proxy run, the Addict to Athlete Proxy Run 5K. For those who have lost their battle to addiction or mental health, you run proxy for them. That's coming up in September. Registration is now open. Jump on addicttoathlete.org for more information. Athletes, today we got a great guest that I'm excited to chat with. I love finding folks like our guest today that have like minds, the ones that have understood that there's more to recovery than just sitting around talking about the good old days or the war stories. These are the people that get out and move. And like you've heard us say before in the past, movement equals healing. This is Luc. Luc, you're up there in the beautiful God's country of Canada. Thanks for carving out some time for us today. Luc, would you mind jumping in and telling the listeners a little bit about you, your marathon to recovery program, and everything you're doing that I think aligns so well with what we do down here in Addict to Athlete. Welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. First of all, I say I love the events that you're doing, that half marathon and the other race there. I think that's really, really cool. And that aligns, like you said, so much with me, what I stand for, so a bit about me. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I've been sober for 6 years, and I found a passion that I never knew existed in my recovery. And that's distance running, long distance running. So I'm a marathoner. I've ran, I just got into it in 2019, actually 2.5 years into my sobriety. I picked it up and it's like a huge, huge passion of mine. And it keeps me positive. It gives me great routine. It frankly just makes me my best, pair that with my sobriety. And I really feel like I'm unstoppable. So it's been a great gift for me. So I'm also doing recovery coaching, alcohol-free recovery, life coaching. I also do running coaching, just to help people, find their best, become their best version of themselves. And I really find that like you mentioned, and everything you're all about, fitness and recovery. I mean, mind and body are connected, and there's no better way to do that than through fitness. It doesn't have to be running. That's just what I do. But it's anything, right? Going to the gym, doing yoga, going for walks, going for hikes, getting the blood going. Like that's what it's all about.
I love it, brother, because, when we started this program in 2011, it was kind of like an excuse for me to go running at lunchtime with my clients. I was a therapist. I kind of thought that the only thing we have here is the 12-step meetings, and those are great, but there's more than one path to recovery. And so I kind of pitched this idea. And I love when I talk to guys like you that have discovered this because of movement, like you just got up and went. I'm curious though, like for you, like again, starting to run marathons, I've seen it. I know exactly why it works. I've been trained in EMDR therapy. It's what it is, and I love it. I'm doing a study right now to kind of link the two together, like running long distance and like overcoming trauma and whatnot. I love it when I talk to guys like you too that have discovered this kind of on your own, where you're like, wait a minute, this seems to work. What was it that pushed you out the door that got you going? Because let's be honest, man, I used to think the same thing, like running's for criminals, right? If you run, you're running away from something, but that's not the case, is it? So tell me a little bit about what that first experience was like for you to get out and move.
Yeah. So I've always been, an athlete. I've always played a lot of sports growing up as a kid, even when I was even kind of in my mid 20s and early 30s when I was struggling with alcohol, struggling with drugs, I was always very active. So like sports were something that I enjoyed. So I was in the gym, about 5, 6 days a week. I played a lot of team sports, played, men's league hockey, golf, did a lot of sports, skied, snowboard, did it all. But something about running that, well, first of all, I hated running growing up. I hated running growing up in school, after school. I hated it, but one of my good friends was into distance sports. Actually, he does Ironmans. He's pretty hardcore. He introduced me to running. So I was kind of like running a little bit just to kind of keep in shape, right? But it wasn't until I did my first 10-kilometer race. I put a race bib on for the first time, and I just fell in love with it. Like I fell in love with with the energy, the crowds, the people, the community of the running community. It was just very captivating for me. And like going to the gym was great, but like I was just, pushing weight. I wasn't really on any program. I just wanted to look good with my shirt off. It was my goal always.
Yeah.
And it's something about running where it's like, it's very much a you versus you. And you have goals and there's different races, and it's something about the time, right? It's very time bound. It's like you can see your progress very quickly, how you're doing. And I just fell in love with that aspect of how it's more of a mental thing for me than anything. Like running is like what it does to my mind. It's really my therapy.
Oh, for sure. And that's why I fell in love with it too. When I realized what it was doing for the clients I was working with, I'm like, wait a minute, this is bigger than even what I thought. I mean, I'm a trained therapist, and so I'm sitting around in a circle, like asking these guys, tell me how you feel, what's going on. They were like brick walls. I get them out moving and running, and all of a sudden they're like telling me life stories and traumas and stuff. I'm like, why are you guys telling me this stuff out here on this run when I have this amazing feng shui office and you guys are like locked tight? And it's that process, like you said, the mind and the body that starts to connect. So I'm curious though, like, if was your drug of choice, was it primarily alcohol, or did it run the gamut?
It was alcohol, and which led into cocaine. So I did that for a few years, and it was never enough. Like the alcohol was never enough. I was always chasing a high,
For sure.
And once I got introduced to that, it's like, why would I just drink beer? If I could, have a better time with this other thing, why not do that? So that near the end, it became, it was never enough. Like alcohol was never enough, and I was just always chasing the high. And it just, wasn't. It's a tough life to sustain.
For sure.
Eventually it's going to catch up to you, and it was slowly catching up to me. But I didn't necessarily hit, necessarily that rock bottom that you see. Certainly my life I was struggling, no question, but I didn't hit that rock bottom. Like I still kept a really good large corporate job for a big global tech sales company. So I had the job, I had a lot of things on the outside that didn't necessarily look like I was maybe struggling from the outside, right? Like I was in shape. I worked out 5-6 days a week. I had a great job. I had my own place. I had a car. I had couple, I looked okay, I guess, from the outside, but, and that's the thing that's made me so eager to be more vocal and to share my story. It's that you don't necessarily need to hit rock bottom to know that maybe you can make some changes. And it's like, if I compare my life now to how it was 6 years ago before I got sober, it's night and day. And it's the night and day is really mostly in my mind, my mindset, my clarity, my attitude. I'm a consistent person. My highs aren't as high, my lows aren't as low. And I just feel like I'm the best version of myself, and it gives me all the reason to just not drink for today.
Yeah, and so I have a question about that, because a lot of folks that would say, "Well, you're fine, man. You've got it under control. Like you got the job, you've got the lifestyle, you got everything you need." But for you, if you must have taken a step back and said, "Hey, I'm without. There's something that I'm lacking." What was it that kind of made you decide to, I don't know, turn that lifestyle into one with running shoes and shorty shorts as you're running, these marathons? Like, what was it that was the pivot point for you that's like, I think I want to be done with this?
Yeah. So like, frankly, I never wanted to be sober. Like that wasn't anything I ever wanted. Like, why would you want that? Right. Like, I'm half Italian. My dad's from Italy and my mom's French Canadian. So two cultures that just grew up socializing, enjoying, company and food and wine and celebrating life. So it's like, I never wanted to be sober. Like, are you kidding me? Like, why would I ever want to be sober?
Yeah.
And I knew that I was struggling. Like I knew I had a bit of a problem, just like, it was like I had a tough time ending the party. So my drinking, my habit was, I never drank alone. And I never used alone. I was a social drinker, and I just had a hard time turning the off switch once I got going. So I knew I had a bit of a problem because, like, once I got introduced to cocaine, it's, I would go, 2 days, 3 days without sleeping and just chasing the next party, nonstop. That was kind of my lifestyle, right? It's like I worked my ass off all week. I'm taking care of my, the business and my paying the bills, and this is what I do. I work hard, I play hard. So the harder I worked, the harder I partied, and I knew it was catching up to me. So I was open-minded to start doing therapy. So I was doing therapy to moderate my drinking, like to be more responsible, to know when to stop. So I was working with a therapist for a while to do that. And it was just, it would work sometimes, it wouldn't work many other times. It was just a lot of inconsistencies. I was disappointing myself. I was letting people down around me. And it was just getting, it was getting harder to kind of keep private. And because I took a lot of pride in the fact that I could hide that stuff, right? Like I would always show up to work on Monday. Never missed work. My colleagues never knew that I was, partying for 24, 48 hours on the weekend. I showed up to work. I just found a way to just make, like I said, to be there. And so I hid it from a lot of people, and it was eventually catching up to me.
Yeah.
So that's when I was working with a therapist, like I mentioned. And then one day after another bad episode, like a tough, really bad weekend, I woke up and I just felt really shitty. And I just said, like, fuck, Luke, like something needs to change. Yeah. You can't keep doing this. So I went on Google. I Googled another therapist in Toronto. And within a couple hours, I actually saw somebody, like fresh after that hangover and that anxiety. I saw someone within 2 hours.
Wow.
And as we got to know each other, he said to me, Luke, you can never be drinking again. And I was just so
he drew the line.
Thrown off.
He drew the line.
Yeah.
He's like, you're done.
He said that. He's like, Luke, you can never be drinking again. And exactly. No one had ever talked to me like that. No one had ever been like that direct. None of my therapists, my girlfriend, my family, no one was like that. And it was just so eye-opening. And actually, in the moment I was debating him, I was like, no, what are you talking about? You crazy.
This therapist, what does he know?
Yeah, I was like, you don't understand my family. Like, they drink a lot. Like my cousins, everyone, like, this is how we bond. This is how I was raised. So I debated him. And anyways, after the meeting, I went back to my car and I just couldn't stop crying because I knew what he was saying. There was something there. So that's when I went back to see him. And then I said, okay, let's figure this out. What do we need to do? And he brought me into group therapy. And that's kind of when the journey started. And again, I never wanted to be sober. Never, ever, ever did I ever want to be sober. But I was like, finally, like, you know what, Luke, like, what do you have to lose here? Let's just maybe give this a try. And it turned out to be the best thing I've ever done for myself.
You bring up, man, thank you, brother. That was amazing because you just dropped like 20 different kind of gems in there. The first thing I want to touch base on, though, is this concept of like being that social drinker to a solo runner. It's a very different thing. I mean, although there are people around you, it's a different squad. It's a different setting. How did you vibe into that? Because again, like you said, when we opened, it's such a personal thing. It's you against you. Yet during the party days and that time, it's like, I just want to be part of all of this. I want to be the life of the party. I want people to remember me and have fun with me. It that alone had to be quite a shift. Like, social drinker, solo runner, those are kind of polar opposites. What did you find? How did you find solace in being like a solo runner in a crowd of people instead of being the life of the party?
Yeah, exactly. And you summarized that beautifully. I think because that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to be the life of the party. And really what that comes down to is I was on this mission to people please. I was a people pleaser. I always cared so much what other people thought of me. Were they laughing at my jokes? Did they think I was cool? Was I fitting in? I took a lot of pride in that, and I worried so much about that. So I guess like this recovery thing for me, it gave me an opportunity to get to know myself in ways I had never done before, because I was just on autopilot of using and drinking. That's just what people do. So remove that, and it's what I call self-discovery, learning more about myself. You have no choice, right? You remove the drugs and alcohol. It's like, okay, what else are you doing? And that's, like I said, that's when I kind of got introduced to running. And I just fell in love with, like, yeah, as much as running is an individual sport, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm running my long runs, for 3 hours, plus on my own. I love running on my own.
Yeah.
With my music, no phone. And it's just an amazing opportunity to just, it's like my therapy, honestly. It's like an opportunity for me to process my day, what's going on. So it's very individual in that sense, but there's also such a huge community around running. Like,
exactly.
The running community is some of the most positive, upbeat, friendliest people in the world. Like, it doesn't matter how fast you're running, how long you're running, how long you've been running for. It doesn't matter. You're outside, you got your shoes on, you're getting after it, you're trying to be better. Like, my kind of people all day. And I actually, something that I've been doing for the past few years now, and it's like such a natural part of me now. It's like, I need to wave, acknowledge, and smile at every single runner I meet on the trails. If you're running, you're crossing my path. It's like, I'm always waving and smiling and saying, nice job. You're looking good, looking strong.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, and I do that for me. It makes me feel good. Like, it makes me feel good. So the running community is like some of the best people. And it's like, the running community is so similar to the recovery community, the sober community. There's so much overlap. And like, that's how I identify. I identify as a sober runner.
Yeah.
So it's like,
see, but you break the rules, man, because again, when I started this 12 years ago, recovery was supposed to be anonymous, right? And we did the very first 5K, and these guys show up, and they're like, I had 5 guys I trained, four guys and 1 girl. I trained for this very first, little 5K. And they show up and they hand out these shirts that says Addict to Athlete. And I'm like, ooh, are you guys sure you want to wear this? Because if you wear this, you're breaking your anonymity. They're like, we don't care. We're happy with what we're doing. And ever since then, brother, like, it's one of the craziest things about no longer remaining anonymous, because in 2023, anonymity can kill you. So I love the fact that not only do you have this huge social media kind of like network, but you also do it in that mind's eye of sobriety. And so people say, oh, there's a sober runner right there. And you know what's funny? 9 times out of 10, the other person waving back is also in recovery. Have you noticed how much like collateral like experiences are for people in recovery and athletics?
There are so much. And I'm actually meeting so many people online that are like really, really good runners. Like, I'm talking like 2:30 marathon runners, like elite runners who have an incredible following on Instagram. They're just very influential, very down to earth, really cool. And do you know that I noticed that they never talk about their sobriety. I met one runner in particular. He's been sober for like 10 years. He's never once shared a single thing about it. I met in person and we were talking about it. And frankly, after that interaction, that was last year at the Boston Marathon, he's been sharing more his story. And I don't, not to say that I inspired that, but it's like,
you did.
There is,
Luke,
but
Luke,
you,
but you
yes,
did.
you can. And there shouldn't be any shame in this recovery thing. Cause I'll tell you right now, I had so much shame and guilt when I got sober.
Yeah.
So I was in the sober closet for 5 years. When I got sober, I never told anybody. I hid it. Like, obviously my immediate family knew and my close friends knew, but like colleagues, people, that I would meet, friends of friends. Like nobody knew I was sober. I kept that to myself.
Yeah.
Why? Because I was ashamed. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought because I'm sober that I'm a loser. I thought that I had a problem. Like you're sober, and that's not cool, Luke. Like you can't handle your booze. You have a drug problem. Like you should be ashamed of yourself.
Wow.
Like there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
That's how I was for 5 years, dude.
Man.
Do you know how like hard that is? Like
yeah, I can
I
imagine.
wore that. Like I didn't have confidence. I felt like a loser.
Yeah,
I really
man.
did. And it's something about, I don't know. I had a big change. But it took me 5 years to like get there.
Yeah, brother.
And now it's like sobriety. I'm so proud. I'm so
For
proud and all
sure.
that. But that's what, like the other thing I want to share so much, and why I'm so excited to be here, is that you don't need to hit any milestone to be proud of your sobriety.
Mm-mm.
Like you should be proud from day one. Like day one. Like being sober is a badass thing. You're going against the grain. You're doing what is right for you. And that is so fucking cool. Like I am so proud of that. And it's like, I don't want to be average. I feel like when you're drinking, you're just blending in with everybody else. But when you're doing something that actually matters to you and you have the balls to follow through with that, like that takes courage, and that should be celebrated.
That's purpose.
Like you're a leader. We're leaders. Exactly. We're finding our purpose. We're becoming the best version of ourselves. And why would that ever be viewed as not cool? Like that is the coolest thing you could ever do.
I love it, man.
So
you are, man. You give me cold chill. You're speaking my language, and I love it. And listeners, I hope you're feeling the passion of what Luke's promoting here. You said something that truly kind of like resonates with me too. About being that people pleaser. I find that so many people in addiction recovery, obviously, they have that same kind of thread. And I've noticed that people with addiction typically have big hearts. Now, that's kind of weird when you kind of pull it back, because if you have a loved one that struggles with addiction, you might think, well, yeah, they're selfish, they're arrogant, they're criminal. But really what happens when you start peeling back all those behaviors away, you start seeing that their hearts are too big, and they carry a tremendous amount of pain and trauma, and they carry everyone else's stuff. And so what I've noticed is that when, we get people that really have hurt, and they find running, and they find sports and athletics and hiking and like trail running and all this stuff, that they let it go on that single track. They let it go. Like I've had my athletes write something they want to let go on the bottom of their shoe and go for the run, and look at it when they get back. I'm like, it's gone. And so you said the same thing, brother. Like my theory on addiction is that we cover pain with it if something hurts. And so anyone that could overcome their trauma and their pain by like you said, getting out there, they're heroes in my eyes, man. Like you've seen it, you've done it. So I guess my question to you is that inner voice, how has it changed from, like keeping you stuck as an addict to now keeping you like focused as being, a runner? Does that make sense? I mean, I don't let my athletes call themselves addicts. I think it's a part of us, not who we are. So I said, do not label your I am with something negative. And it's so hard for them. But how's that inner voice changed for you?
Yeah, I related to so much of what you said there, by the way. We definitely are very similar.
I love it, brother.
I love it. Very similar. Yeah, it's look. I love what you said too. It's like people in who've suffered with addiction, they have big hearts. I love that. I also feel that people with addiction have so much passion built into them, and if they can funnel that energy, that commitment, that excitement, because we're passionate people. Like people in an addiction, like we're like when we like something, we're 0 or 100. When we do something, we're not going to half-ass it. When we drink and we use, we're not going to half-ass it. We are going to have the best time, because that's what we are. We're like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do 100. So imagine funneling that 0 or 100 to something that's actually beneficial to your life, that can make you more patient, more understanding, more positive, like fitness. Like that's what fitness does. It makes you better. It just allows you to release that stress of the day to day, all that shit in your head. Like that's what fitness does. You release it. You get that natural dopamine that you've earned, and you earn that dopamine. And that's like the runner's high, or that's what that there's nothing better than that.
It's real.
And it's like, it's real. Exactly. And you earned it. And it's, and there's no come down. You're not going to do something that you're going to regret. You're not going to say something to hurt somebody. You're not going to, there's no downside. There's zero downside.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's so much hope for people who are struggling. Those are the people that have the most hope, because it's like, what an amazing opportunity you have to rewrite the script. What an amazing opportunity you have to restart. It doesn't matter where you are on that journey. It doesn't matter. Like I said, for me, I was, I call myself lucky that I caught myself before it was, before I lost my job, before my wife left me and all that stuff, right? I'm lucky, because there are so many people who maybe aren't as lucky and they've lost a lot, or they're in the hospital. But those people still, like I'm sure you're seeing it too. Yeah. Amazing comeback stories, amazing resilience, and it's never, ever, ever too late. We love those.
We love the comeback story. If you watch a movie about a comeback, you're like, hell yeah. But if you watch a movie, it's just like it just happens. It's like, that's boring, right? We want that Rudy story, don't we?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's such an opportunity to come back, and it's and that's why I'm loving more and more this online community of people who are just so brave, that are sharing their stories, being vulnerable. It's because like we're all on the mission to like help and inspire one person, because we've all been there. We know what the guilt and shame is like. So if we can touch one person, like why wouldn't we? That's exactly what I'm trying to do is touch one person. If one person's listening today and it's like, you know what, fuck, something resonated with me and I'm going to try to do something different, then I had a great day today. I touched one person, and that feels so good to me. Like to me, it's like, that's living. That's like legacy, is like taking the stuff, the negative, turning it into a positive. That's how I'm looking at this. Like, I had a lot of things I'm not proud of, a lot of things I've done that I will never say out loud again. That's just, unfortunately how it is. But you know what? I'm at a point now where it's like, I needed all those things to happen. Every little thing needed to happen the way it did, because it brought me to where I am today. If they didn't happen like that, maybe I wouldn't have been so open-minded to trying something different like this.
Yep.
So I'm actually thankful. You know?
So listeners, what Luke's saying is like, I want you guys to take a pause. If you're in active addiction, early recovery, where you are right now is a necessary step for what's coming next. And I'm so glad you touched base on that. I want your thoughts on this, brother. Again, I noticed that like running community / recovery, again, like you said, so tightly entwined. I've noticed that, one thing I wasn't prepared for when I started coaching some of these folks was that, and I was totally intending on only having them do 5K, 10K, maybe a half marathon. It was my brother-in-law that's like, Blue, you're limiting them. Let them go. And so we started having marathoners and then ultra marathoners. I'm an ultra marathon runner now because of that mindset. I'm like, I guess I can do this. But I've noticed something about people in recovery that have learned to do really hard things. And I was talking to one of my athletes years ago, and I'm like, you just flipping tore up that mountain like it was nothing. I'm like, are your legs not burning? Are they not on fire? It's like, yeah, man, it flipping hurts. And he said something, Luke, that will always resonate with me. He said, but it doesn't hurt as bad as it did the day that I lost my kids to family services when I was in my active addiction. And that first night where, I'm turning off the lights in the house, knowing that my addiction got them taken and the house was quiet. Like, that hurts. So I'm running up these hills. He's like, that pain doesn't even affect me because it was nowhere near what I've already done. I'm kind of curious about your mindset on that, about what makes people in recovery such amazing runners and such strong athletes. I mean, they know how to channel that stuff, but I'm curious what your mindset is on that.
I love that. That gave me shivers actually hearing that. I relate to that a lot too. And it's like, I find that people in recovery, like we touched on, have big hearts. We're super passionate. At the same time, I notice a theme too, that we like to do hard things. We can do hard things because we're so resilient. Mm-hmm. We are so resilient. Mm-hmm. And it's something about, I feel like for me, I could just speak for myself. I feel like I'm proving to myself that I am this sober badass, and I am this special, person who I don't want to blend in. I don't want to be average. Mediocrity scares the shit out of me. I like to do hard things because I earned it. And it's like, I've taken the easy way out my whole life. everything I've done, I've taken the easy way out. And it's something about doing hard things, having that breakthrough. There's no better feeling in the entire world. Like literally pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, signing up for that race. That it could be a 5K, 10K, doesn't matter. Something that you just, that makes you scared and nervous. Like our goals should scare the shit out of us.
Here,
and if they don't, they're not big enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why I love marathon running, because it's hard. And then I love that most people don't understand what it is. Most people don't even know what the distance is. Like they don't know anything about it. And I love it. That's what I love about it, because it's hard and it's not for everybody. And the fact that I can do it, it just makes me feel like, yeah, I am this badass. And it gives me all the inspiration to keep going and to keep pushing. And I think, you know, I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. Okay. I got sober before she was born. Oh. That's my greatest accomplishment. I knew I wanted to be a father. My dad struggled with alcohol. I just didn't, you know, he's an amazing man. I don't want to talk that bad about my dad. Sure. He's an amazing man, but he struggled in Italian, you know, ego and all that stuff. So for me, it's like, I knew I wanted to be sober before I had my daughter. And, you know, she's never met drunk daddy because I never had a drink since she was born. Yeah. So I do all this running, right? And, you know, I'm running like, you know, 65, 70 miles a week. Like I'm running a lot. And my daughter comes with me, my wife, to all my races. You know, I did Boston Marathon last year. I'm doing the Toronto Marathon coming up. You know, they come with me. I'm doing Chicago Marathon in the fall. They come with me. And my daughter, she looks at me like daddy runs a lot. And I always think of the example that I'm leading for her. And it's not to be the runner. It's like the message is, you commit to something and you give it 110%. And you have the proper coaching, like you do it right, the guidance, the you know, all the things. It's like, look at what daddy's doing. Okay. Daddy never grew up running. I hated running. Now it's like I'm qualifying for world majors. Okay. And it's not because I'm a freak athlete. It's because I show up every fucking day. I show up, and it's like my recovery. I show up. Days I feel like shit. Trust me, there are probably so many days in the month that I don't want to run, or I feel bad, I feel down, or it's even my recovery. I'm not feeling good, but I still show up. And that's the message. That's my message for my daughter. Yeah. That's what inspires me to keep going. And I'm all fired up talking right now.
I love it, man. I feel the passion. But that's the thing, right? And I wanted to ask you a few things about some of your experiences. That first marathon, like anyone's, is like, what am I doing? Like, what was your feeling like that very first marathon? And I'm curious, what do you do when you inevitably hit that wall? How do you get through it? Because I think the analogy of marathon and recovery are so flippin' brilliant. Because in therapy, right, you started off with a therapist. It was like kind of throwing you some softballs, but it was enough to get you aware. Then all of a sudden, bam, you hit a wall. For me, mile 18, marathon, like, oh, are we there yet? But then that second wind, right, and you catch it. So I'm curious, your very first marathon experience, you line up. You said you were athletic and stuff, but like thinking about the end of a marathon before you even start is so inappropriate because there's so much that can happen in between there. What was that first one like versus, I want to talk about that medal you got right behind you because I see that medal back there, Boston Marathon. I want to know what the difference is between the first one and then Boston behind you.
So I'll tell you this. I trained my absolute ass off for my first marathon. Okay. Brilliant. So I ran my first ever race in 2019. I did a 10K. Shortly after that, I signed up for a half. So I did that in May. That October, I did a half marathon. 2019 half marathon in October. And then shortly after that, I was hooked. I was like, okay, this is really, really cool. And I told you one of my best friends was like, Luke, like you should get a running coach. Like you're really enjoying this. Like see this through, like get a running coach. So I got a running coach online, right? I've met him since, but like for 2 years, I never met him. It was all online. He was giving me, you know, a plan and I was just executing it. And this happened during COVID, right? COVID happened in 2020, right? Like March 2020. Mm-hmm. So when all the races were canceling and there's just so much uncertainty happening, I doubled down on my training. I got the coach and I started running just running, following the plan. And come 2021 in September, there was a marathon, first like race in like 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it was inaugural race in like north of Toronto, small town, there was like, I don't know, a few hundred runners, and it was a Boston qualifier. They somehow got it to be a Boston qualifier. So like I said, trained my ass off, and I ran it, and my first marathon, and it was hard. It was really, really hard.
Yeah.
I had one of my best friends who was pacing me. He's a very, very good runner. So he was like in front of me. Like, I didn't have to think about pace strategy. I just kind of hung on. But I wanted to quit so bad at like you said, mile 18, 19,
Yeah, man.
20.
What am I doing?
It was getting really, really hard. And anyways, I did it. I pushed through. I was under so much pain, but I just kept thinking about, like, honestly, I was thinking about my sobriety, my legacy, because at that point I hadn't shared publicly about my sobriety. And I was still like I wasn't talking about it at all. And I was like, Luke, you're about to hit your 5-year anniversary, and this is potentially a Boston qualifier. Yeah. So imagine the story that you're leaving here. It's like sober runner, finds running, finds his passion, qualifies for the Boston Marathon, hits 5 years sober. I was like, Luke, this is your story. This is your story. And it just inspired me in training and inspired me so much. And on that race, I qualified for Boston. And it was just such an incredible feeling, my first marathon. But like I said, I worked my ass off. Don't think for a second for a second I'm a freak athlete and I just got it easy. I worked my ass off, and I was like so emotional. My whole family was there, finish line,
Wow.
uncles and my mom, my brother, my daughter, my nieces, like everyone was there
To watch
such
you.
an emotional time.
To watch you. Oh, wow.
It was so cool. And then a few months later, or 8 months or 9 months later, I ran Boston, and that was just an incredible experience. Like, I can't even put that into words, so emotional. And my daughter came, my mother-in-law, my wife, we drove down. It's expensive going to these big races. It's so anyways, we drove. Mm-hmm. It is. But anyways, I earned it, and we drove there, and we had a blast. And it's like, the Boston Marathon just finished yesterday, right? Yep. I was watching that on TV, and it's just like, it's getting me so excited once again.
I love it, man. I love it. I can feel that passion inside of you. I want to talk briefly, because I want to make sure we have enough time, but this friend of yours, a lot of us don't have friends like this. I love the fact that not only did he see your potential, but he's like, dude, you've got something in here. Like, this is what you should do. So many times we see friends, that like want to egg us on to do stupid crap. But whoever this guy is, man, I got to tip my hat to him, because that's amazing.
He's an amazing man. Okay. His name's Ryan, and he's my best friend. We've been through so much together, and guess what? He is also in recovery.
Sweet.
And guess what? We help each other. I'd like to think I introduced him to this recovery thing, because he was struggling when I was sober. I was about a year and a half sober. He was really, really struggling. Mm-hmm. I like to think by me, being close with him, leading by example. Yeah. We didn't really talk too much heart to heart about this stuff, typical guys, but
for sure.
Anyways, he quickly followed suit. He got sober. So I feel like I helped him there, and he helped me with my fitness and my running and my all that. So it's like we were tied to the hip in our worst and darkest moments, using and doing horrible things together. Mm-hmm. To now, he's an Ironman world champion. He qualified for the half Ironman 70.3 in
St. George, Utah.
Last year. No, Utah, exactly. Utah. He did it last year, so he qualified for that.
That's just like about 3 hours away from me, man. We're just down the street.
There you go.
Yep.
Exactly. And he's going to qualify for Kona. That's his next goal. He will 100% do it. He's just so disciplined. So it's like, look, we have this incredible relationship where we're both, sober.
I love
we're
it, man.
Both, chasing, doing hard things together. And we're just being the best version of ourselves together. And
Luke, that's rare.
To have a friend like that, it's
so
rare. Where you've been through the trenches together, and now you're just doing your thing, in a positive way together. It's really, really cool.
It's freaking awesome. Well, when he mentioned to you that coach, I'm like, that's someone that sees value in a friendship like that. So I wanted to touch base on that. So Ryan, congratulations, man. I wish I would have known who you were, Ryan. I would have come down and cheered for you because all of our Addict athlete team was down there doing aid stations and stuff for the Ironman down there. But the cool part
that's cool.
about that friendship is brother, it's rare, man. Like you usually find one that gets a little bit of that jealousy or kind of like, like, oh, you're too far ahead of me. I love the fact that you two were these brothers in arms. It's one of the coolest things. And so congratulations, Ryan. It's awesome. And good luck on Kona. Brother, I know, again, I could talk to you for days, but I love the passion that you're bringing.
Me too. You're bringing it out of me, by the way.
I dig. Well, I think those heartbeats, they beat in that rhythm, man. I feel it.
Yeah.
I guess for me though, people say that, and I've heard this, and I know you've heard this. If you haven't, you will. People say, oh, Luke, you're just switching addictions, man. You're just going from alcohol to running. And I love this conversation. I love this debate because I can prove them wrong tenfold. But what do you think of that? Because people think, oh, you're switching addictions.
Yeah. I can't help but think of Rich Roll when I hear that.
Yeah, there you go.
I can't help think of Rich Roll because Rich Roll summarized that so beautifully in a post like years ago. And I feel like it came up recently. And he said that exactly. He's like, people have kind of said that my running, my passion for running and fitness has been, was what took over alcohol. It's like now I'm obsessed and I'm addicted to this. And he like, I wish I had the quote because he just says it so beautifully. But it's like alcohol is the easy way out. Running is the hard way out. Like alcohol escapes you from reality. Running and fitness puts you directly square into reality. Yes. So it's like you can't compare the two because like alcohol and drugs, that's like you're in another planet. Whereas fitness and running, it just puts you smack in the middle of reality, and it's what makes you stronger and better. And it's so much harder to show up for that than it is to using, because that's like you're doing like, oh, okay, this is hard. Let's just go to what I know, and that's the drugs and alcohol, and I'm gonna feel better. But it's like running. It's like there's pain. It's like consistency over intensity that gets you there. Yep. It's like showing up when you don't want to, showing up and not seeing progress, showing up and like not getting better and faster and still showing up. That's hard. So it's like you can't. I get the correlation of the two. It's like, but it's like it's so much different. It's so much different.
It's night and day. And the reason why, and listeners, I want you to really listen to this part right here, is the reason why it's very different is because who was waiting for you at the end of that first marathon? Your entire family. That's never happened at the end of a night unless you're getting an intervention, right? It's like they were there to support you, to watch you, to be part of that. And then to put the cherry on top with Boston. I mean, there's so much difference. Thing is wait till that little girl of yours like starts to get old enough to want to go out on runs with dad. And then you're doing this with them. We have this thing called the minor league on Addict Athlete. It's the 18-year and younger crew. It's the kids that are like, the kids of the people who have addictions. And they're like, hey, I get to go out and run with my mom or my dad. And then that's an hour and a half, 2 hours of just solid time. No phones, no games, nothing. It's just that. So yeah, it is. I love that debate. And I love the fact that like we can debunk that at a drop of a feather, man. I dig it.
So if it's okay with you, I found the post. It's like not long. I'll read it quickly here.
Go
okay.
For it. Mm-hmm.
So it's titled, "You've shifted your addiction from alcohol to running." He goes, I hear that all the time, but here's the thing. Alcohol is always the easy choice. Running is always the hard choice. Alcohol is a way out. Running is a way in. Alcohol constricts the mind. Running expands it. Alcohol mutes the senses. Running electrifies perception. Alcohol removes you from reality. Running places you squarely in it. Alcohol fuels false bravado. Running forces a confrontation with humility. Alcohol lies. Running tells the truth. Alcohol begets denial. Running begets acceptance. All roads with alcohol lead to loneliness. All trails with running lead to community. Alcohol stole my life. Running gave birth to a new one. In other words, alcohol is a prison. Running is freedom. And then he says, you can swap alcohol for any addictive substance or behavior that moves your life in the wrong direction. And he says you can swap running for your preferred spiritual practice, mode of movement, or healthy habit that moves you in the right direction.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, mic drop right there. That's it. 100%. You've seen it. You've lived it. You've experienced it. I have. What about those people out there that are like, nervous about starting? What advice do you give them to like say, hey, just go grab that pair of tennis shoes, just go out there and put in, around the block. You don't need to run a marathon today, but you'll want to next month, right?
Here's what I'll say. If we want to experience something different, right? If like, what's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So if we want to actually see a different result, we got to try different things. And that's just being open-minded. And like you said, it doesn't mean running a marathon. It doesn't mean, doing an Ironman. It doesn't mean becoming a power lifter in the gym. No, it means putting your shoes on and getting out the door. That's it. Getting out the door. The heaviest weight is that front door.
Yeah.
Getting your shoes on, getting outside and just trying something, just trying. And just once you try it, you're probably not going to like it right away. That's for sure. You're not going to like it. When you start trying, when I started running, I again, it's hard, but it's like, it's you show up consistently.
Yep.
And you'll see progress. And when you start seeing progress, it's like that breakthrough starts happening. It's like, wow, look what I've done in this short amount of time. Imagine what I did if I saw it through, if I stuck to it. And then you meet other people who are doing the same thing, who are also putting their shoes on, who are also trying something different, that are pushing themselves outside of what's comfortable. That's where growth is. Like, that's where the magic is. That's where the magic is.
But that means that what you're saying, and listeners, I want you to pay particular attention to this. Luke, that's what you're saying is then during that 2 years during COVID and all that stuff, as you were constantly training, you weren't having the races or the T-shirts or the medals, or you were training. That's where the real work is. And I think some people, I had so many athletes at the beginning of this program that wanted to show up for the race because it's fun. But I'm like, where's your training? Where's your logs? Let me see. And they're like, I really haven't. And you can tell on race day. I can tell on race day who's been doing their workouts and who hasn't. I can tell who's keeping Friday night sober when they show up Saturday early morning to run. And so I love that mindset, brother. I love it. It's like the consistency is in the doing, in the getting up and going, because 2 years you trained and you kicked ass. And you only did it because you were willing to put in the time, the energy, the work, the doubt, the pride, all that. You put it all into there and you got it done. I think that is the coolest thing. I'm happy that you didn't have like a race right away. I'm so glad that you took that time to refine yourself so that when you came out, you were at the top of your game and you're like, I'm ready to go. I love that, brother. That's rare too.
Yeah, I feel like that's when also a lot of people maybe slowed down running because, like you said, there wasn't the races. They didn't have that thing to prepare for, so maybe they slowed down a bit. And I feel like I did the complete opposite of that. I doubled down.
How, dude? How did you do that? Because I know so many people that relapsed. I have athletes that died, that they lost their battle to addiction, during that time. I'm so curious how you said opportunity and not like, well, the hell with this. How did you do that?
I honestly, it's just, I thought about so badly the example I wanted to be for my daughter.
Beautiful.
And just how amazing I would feel visualizing this goal happening. Like pretty much all of my runs, I would celebrate near the end of the run on my own. No one's there, not for Instagram, not for social media, no phones. I would celebrate as if I was crossing the Boston finish line like this.
I love it.
And
Power move.
On my own. And I would just like visualize it.
Arms in a V.
And it just got me fired up. And honestly, it did. And the other thing is I had other friends that were also very influential for me. Like Ryan, he was training his ass off too. And I had a couple other friends that I got to know. in this community who are also very goal oriented, and they got me very excited. And then I got to say this too, though. My wife, how amazingly supportive she's been, because look, that's a lot of time away from the family, right? I'm running a lot, and she supported me with that, and she knew what I was doing. She knew it made me a better husband, a better dad, and she was so supportive. But if I didn't have that support, and if I was with a partner who would criticize me or would just make it harder, that would have been hard to do. So I don't want to take that for granted either.
So we could do a whole nother episode on supportive wives, because I've got one of those too. None of this Addict to Athlete would ever be possible without her. So shout out. What's your wife's name? Lisa, thank you so much for letting Luke do what he needs to do, because it's going to be a stronger dad, stronger husband, but also an inspiration to a lot of people. Brother, how do people get in touch with you? Because you've got this heart that beats in the rhythm that I know my athletes are going to want to get to know. What's your socials? What's your outlets? How do they get? I mean, you've got coaching opportunities. How do people reach you?
So my Instagram handle is marathon to sobriety, and Lisa came up with that because she's like, sobriety is a marathon. There's no shortcuts. It's literally like one day at a time, and just chipping away at it one day at a time, showing up when you don't want to. Yeah. And she came up with that, and that's what it is. So marathon, the number 2, sobriety. If you also, for your viewers, if you go on my website, you sign up for my mailing list, I have a free gift. I have a free guide that I've put together on how to be the life of the party sober. Because like I mentioned, that was my thing. I was so concerned about other people. And it's like, now this identity and this confidence that I have in sobriety, how do I managing these social situations which gave me a lot of anxiety? Now it's like I go to all these events sober, and I've just never been, so confident in who I am. I don't give a shit what other people think of me. I'm not trying to impress anybody. And it's true, like confidence. That's what I was chasing all these years with drugs and alcohol. And I found in sobriety. Like, isn't that ironic how that works?
I love it. Yep. It's perfect. I think it's great. So we'll definitely be putting those in the socials, so that in the description of this episode. But listeners, reach out to Luke. You can feel the passion, you can feel the drive. His heart definitely beats in the rhythm of recovery and sobriety, and that's what it's all about, after all. So Luke, thanks for being a guest today, brother. I totally appreciate this. And this can't be the last one, because I've got like a whole other way. I got tons of questions for you.
We connect so much. Honestly.
Seriously, man.
I love your energy. I love what you stand for. I'm so happy we did this. And I agree. Let's do another one.
We gotta get you and Ryan both on here, so that both.
I gotta get Ryan to exactly. I know he likes to keep a low profile, but he's a very impactful, amazing person. He's doing amazing things.
He is. So listeners, you've been well fed. Continue, please, to support Addict to Athlete through sharing this podcast and through reaching out and touching base with some of our guests. We've got lots of backlog podcasts for you to go re-listen to as you're running and training. It helps you erase the addiction, replace it with things of greater value. That's what this podcast exists for, to help you, athletes, turn your mess into a message.